I know, yeah. But it's going to be there now. ولا إرشاد يدرك Just a few seconds more. Demon have a mic. You don't need one. Okay, طيب بسم الله تمام كنت بنا. بسم الله.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we send salutations on our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow him to the day of judgment. Ameen. Our beloved Shaykh Shoayb Ahmed can be described as a lifelong learner. Our beloved Shaykh has a doctorate and is a graduate of Jamia al-Islamiyya, Kulliyat al-Sharia. And after that, 10 years ago, the Shaykh continued to study further, visited many ዑለማء, specifically ዑለማء of Hadith, and he was able to gather many of the highest asanid in Hadith in the world currently. So he's considered one of the scholars that have asanid, high asanid, or elevated asanid in South Africa. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce my friend, Shaykh Dr. Shoayb Ahmed, Musnid, Junub Africa. فليتفضل مشكور.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Okay, shukran, jazakallah khair for the opportunity, and to Sheikh Abdullah, a dear and old friend back from the days of Medina, and to everyone else. And I must apologize for being late. Someone said I have to follow the Cape Town road and it shouldn't be too early. Nonetheless, but alhamdulillah, I don't intend keeping you too long. I'm busy attending another function at the same time, and somehow I have to speak there this afternoon. But nonetheless, inshallah, what I will do, or what is hoped that we can do, inshallah, is that we read these aḥādīth which Sheikh Salim and others have compiled. Someone will read it, and I'll just make some comments with regard to the isnad. I see in the beginning, like the practice is hadith and musalsal bil awwaliyah. So before we actually start, there's a few things. One is when it comes to the isnad, ideally the best situation is to physically meet the sheikh and read to him or hear hadith from him. That is the best when you do your ulum al-hadith, that ijaza bis-sama', where you either listen to the sheikh or you read to him. So many times that's possible. But sometimes it's not possible because the sheikh is perhaps too busy or is too ill or whatever the reason may be. So you may be able to get just one hadith, and that's most cases hadith al-rahma. And by virtue of listening to hadith al-rahma, they grant you an ijaza amma. And so you are allowed to now narrate everything else that I narrate, all the other books that I have ijaza in and isnad in, etc. So that happens at times. And at times you may not even be able to meet the Sheikh. You may have met him somewhere and you made salam, and he may have been in a hurry or something, so you didn't get a chance to actually speak to him. So you write the Sheikh a letter. It doesn't happen too often today by using email, but it still happens to some of the older shuyukh. They don't know much about email or anything like that. You send him a letter. Or in the past, I recall sending a fax to some ulama, sending a letter to some ulama, and I'll mention something just now about one or two. And they respond in a written letter by granting ijaza mukatabatan. You hear about mukataba. They write you a letter and say, Ajastuka bima sahat li riwayatuhu an shuyukhi, etc. And they'll mention sometimes in the letter, وبما فيها حديث الرحمة وغيرها, etc. So that's mukatabatan. If that can't happen, you may have a friend or you may have a contact or another sheikh or another alim, maybe younger alim in a certain country, and you ask him, could you go to so-and-so sheikh and ask for ijaza on my behalf? And that's istijaza, right? Talab al-istijaza. So someone yastajiz sheikh lak, right? So you find certain people who know the sheikh, and certain shuyukh, when they become old, either because of their health or because people are irritating them, at odd times. Some people don't respect the Sheikh's time and his health. So they'll knock at his house at 12 o'clock at night. I came to read to you. The Sheikh wants to sleep. He's sick. So certain of the shuyukh's families have closed the doors. So we don't accept any visitors. Right? We're not accepting any visitors because some people don't respect the shuyukh. They don't make an appointment. You just knock and you expect the Sheikh to open. You come 2 o'clock in the morning, you come this time, the Sheikh must open. He's still insan, he's still human being, he's got his times, he's got it. So in that case, you send via someone else who knows the Sheikh. You tell him, yes, go and ask ijaza for the Sheikh on my behalf. So certain times you get ijaza, by virtue of someone else being kind enough to go and ask the ijaza on your behalf. I said I'll mention something about the letters. I recall two incidents, and both the ulama here may know of them. One was Shaykh Yusuf al-Atum. Yusuf al-Atum was one of the students of Shaykh Badruddin al-Hasani, who was known as the great muhaddith of Sham. And Shaykh Badruddin al-Hasani, I don't want to go into his detail, there's a lot of work written about him. But he had one of his last students who was living in Jordan in a place called Jarish. Yusuf al-Atum was about 104 years old, right, a few years ago. And people were eager to read hadith to him and take ijaza from him. I went to Jordan but couldn't meet him because in the warmer season, he goes further out where it's a bit warmer. And so I went to his home and said, the Sheikh is not here. He's gone. He's a few hours away from here. He's only going to be back in a few days' time. So anyway, some years later, I sent him a letter. I sent it via a friend. This friend of mine arrived at the Sheikh's home, parked his car, was walking out of he was this distance, maybe till the front door here. That's how far he was from the Sheikh's home. And the Sheikh's son came out. And the son said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to see your father. He says, my father just passed away. Right? And that man was carrying the letter. And I'm going to come back to it now. Then there was Shaykh Ahmed al-Dawghan, a great Shafi alim from Ahsa in Saudi Arabia. I know Shaykh Muhammad Awama, and I speak highly about him. He was also in his 90s and one of the great awliya and one of the great Shafi alim as well. I asked someone in Jeddah to take a letter, talab al-istijaza, to seek ijaza on my behalf from him, because the chances of us getting to Ahsa is a bit difficult. In the past, if you went to Saudi Arabia, you just went straight for Umrah, and to get to Ahsa is quite a distance. So this man used to go once a month to Shaykh Ahmed Dawghan and sit with him for 2-3 days. He arrived, or he was leaving his house in Jeddah. He drove maybe half an hour, and someone phoned him and said Shaykh Ahmed Dawghan had passed away. And he had my letter in his hand. So both of them told me, don't write letters to the shuyukh. It looks like Malak al-Maut is carrying your letter. All the 2 letters you sent, both the shuyukh passed away. So that sometimes you end up with situations like that, where that's why any chance you get, any opportunity you get, meet the shuyukh or the senior ones that are still alive all over the world,
make an effort to try and make contact with them, because things change, situations change. But Qadar Allah, a person passes away. Shaykh Wasfi al-Musaddi, I'll speak about him, was a great mufti of Homs, the city of Homs in Syria, and he had extremely high isnad. And I had arranged with some ulama. He was living for a while in Jeddah. We arranged with some ulama to meet him on one particular day, and he had agreed, but he was very ill. He was, bedridden, on a wheelchair. We came to his front door. We had the appointment after Maghrib. We were at his front door. The son came out, sorry, my father's health is really bad. He can't barely stand. He's in a lot of pain. He's not seeing any visitors. Fine, what can we do? I went back to Makkah. I was in Makkah for Umrah, so I went back to Makkah. That was on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Friday morning, one of the ulama phoned me and said, listen, he's feeling a bit well. His son said he's going to go for Jummah to the masjid across his house. So it's an opportunity for you, but it means leave Makkah now and come. So I left Makkah 9 in the morning, took a taxi, came to this place in Jeddah, waited, went with them to the masjid. The Shaykh came out. They brought him in the wheelchair for Jummah. After Jummah, we were able to make salam to him and greet him, and then he granted the ijazah and stuff like that. But like I said, so sometimes things happen like this. There are numerous incidents. Shaykh Ismail al-Imrani, some of you may have heard of him. Qadi Ismail al-Imrani, Muhammad Ismail al-Imrani, was known as the Qadi of Yemen or Sana'a. And his isnad is probably amongst the highest in the world when it comes to the link to Shawkani. To Shawkani, he's probably had he passed away about a few years ago. He was in about 100, maybe 99 years old. Now, Ismail al-Imrani, in 2009 already, when I went with the intention to meet him, I was told by his grandson that the doctors have stopped him from seeing anyone. His health is too bad. He's not allowed to teach. He's not allowed to meet people, etc. I said, all right, fine. I was right at his masjid. They said, sorry, Shaykh is in the house. He doesn't leave his house except for maybe salah, and that's it. But he's not even allowed to meet people. I accepted it. The day I was leaving, I was on my way to the airport, flying out of Yemen. Someone phoned me from the masjid. He said, were you the person looking for Shaykh Ismail al-Imrani the other day? I said, yes. He said he went for his weekly checkup to the hospital. He's on his way home. So before he walks into his yard as such, that's your best chance to meet him. Once he gets in, no visitors are allowed. I told the taxi driver, turn around. He says, you're sending me to the other side of Sana'a. That's another half an hour drive. I said, just do it. I may not get another chance. As we were in the street where the Shaykh's home is. The Shaykh was on the opposite side, getting off his car. His grandson and others were holding his hands and taking him to the... I told the taxi driver, stop. And we ran, someone was with me, we ran down the street. So all these Yemenis are looking at us running down the street. Who are these people running, like almost like we're going to rob a person or something like that? We're running down the street. I came in front of the Shaykh, I was out of breath. I said, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. He looked at me. Now he's in 90s or 80s. He looked at me, who are you? What are you running in the street like this for and coming at me for this? I never saw you in my life. What do you want? I said, Shaykh, I need to speak to you. He says, about what? Where you heard about me? What do you want from me? I said, no, I know you about this. I know about Shawkani. I know you wrote this book. I know you did this. So he looked at me. He said, told everybody else, you stay outside. You open the door, you come inside. So I went inside and the person was with me. He said, all right, who's this? Is he with you? I said, yes, come inside. And he closed the door. Right? And we went in, we sat, he granted ijazah. He says, anything else you need from me? I said, no. He opened the door and said, right, now you can leave. Right? And he told others, you're not allowed inside. And from there, went back to the airport. And that was it. And he passed away, like I said, a few years ago. He was from amongst the Zaydi ulama, right? But he taught Sahih al-Bukhari for like 50, 60 years. Right? And he wrote some comments. He's got some ta'liqat on Sahih al-Bukhari and various other works as well. Right? So, but he was known as a very senior alim. So like this, there's numerous incidents. Anyway, so I'll just start. Otherwise, time will keep us busy thinking about all of these ulama and some of the asanid and some of the the process on meeting some of these ulama. Anyway, as I recall something, I may share with you, inshallah. The Hadith al-Rahma is the one that I'll probably just narrate. The Hadith and I'll mention a few things about the hadith, and someone else, one of the shuyukh, can read the remainder of the hadith. It's 10, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So بأسانيد المتصلة عن الشيوخ رحمهم الله تعالى بأسانيدهم إلى عمرو بن دينار عن أبي قابوس عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن يرحموا من في الأرض يرحمكم أو يرحمكم من في السماء. That's the hadith الرحمة المسلسل, which is known as musalsal بالأولية. Now أولية either حقيقية or إضافية. حقيقية mean which is literally the first hadith that you heard from the Shaykh, or إضافية meaning you may have heard other hadith from the Shaykh and then in passing you heard hadith al-Rahmah. So it's not أولية حقيقية, but whatever the case may be. So this particular hadith is normally, like I said, depending on time, the situation you don't have the luxury to read Sahih al-Bukhari to a Shaykh or something like that. So you just hear hadith al-Rahmah and the shuyukh grant you ijazah. Now there's two things that has happened. Some of the shuyukh, especially the ulama of Sham and some of the ulama of India, had this practice of being very strict for many, many years, that they didn't give ijazah until you sit and read an entire book to them. Read Bukhari to me or read Riyadh al-Salihin, but they want you to sit down and read. The ulama of Yemen and a few others were generally more relaxed, more, we'd say lenient. And each had their, their reasons. Some said, no, we can't just give ijazah, people are abusing it. Others said, no, we want the silsilat al-isnad to continue. This whole chain of sanad, this whole process to continue, because if we become too strict, nobody's going to comply and meet the requirements and the standards, and the whole sanad may die. Because once the shaykh dies, the sanad comes with him. And if he didn't grant ijazah to anybody, then that riwayah is gone. So then in the later years, some ulama became, even the Sham ulama and others have become a bit more lenient. They granting ijazah, but more would then they understood that we're going to lose these isnad. And that has happened. It has happened with a number of ulama. If we look at, I'm just going to use the example of India. We all know about the role that Shah Waliullah Dahlawi plays in India as the center of all riwayah of hadith goes through Shah Waliullah Dahlawi. But in India itself, the asanid and the links to Shah Waliullah Dahlawi are almost three that I can recall. I could be wrong here. But there's the Ahlul Hadith. You have the Saharanpur, that is Maulana Zakaria Kandahlawi. And then you have the Deoband link, right, that go through Shah Waliullah Dahlawi. There's even the Ahmad Rida Khan link, etc. as well. But I'll focus on these three for now. Generally, the shortest sanad to Shah Waliullah in India was from the Ahlul Hadith. Right? And I'll give you the sanad just now. And then there was the next in terms of number of links between them to Shah Waliullah was Saharanpur and then Deoband. So the Ahlul Hadith had 4 links between them and Shah Waliullah. Saharanpur, the students of Maulana Zakaria, 5, and Deoband, 6. Right? So I found out some years ago that there was Shaykh Muhammad Akbar Farooqi was still alive. He was from the ulama of Ahlul Hadith, and he narrated from Ahmadullah al-Amrohi, from Nadir Hussain, from Muhammad Ishaq Dahlawi, and that was his sanad. So it was a very strong sanad, and he was in his 90s. So I found someone. I said, can you make an appointment? I haven't been to India in my life. I can't speak Urdu, but I want to meet the Shaykh. So they said, okay, but he lives in a place called Dehradun. Dehradun is closer to the border in Kashmir, Kashmiri border rather. So being typical South African and using the internet, so I said, okay, if I'm going to land in Delhi, Dehradun is 200 kilometers, 200 and some odd kilometers. So I thought about the South African roads and this and that. So I said, 200 kilometers, 2.5 hours, I should be there. I get on the car at 8 in the morning. I reached Dehradun at Maghrib time. That 200 kilometers was like, the car was in front of you, then the truck, and then this, then this, then that. and the driver doesn't drive more than 60 or 70 kilometers per hour. He says, no, I can't drive faster than this. Anyway, I got Maghrib time to Dehradun. Luckily, the appointment was the next day. So I went first to make salam to the Shaykh and tell him, look, I'm here. I got an appointment with you tomorrow, just confirming that I'm in the town. So he said, no, I know about it. My grandson informed me and I'm expecting you tomorrow. But the grandson told me the next morning when I was there at 9 o'clock, he said, my grandfather only allows people to read for 30 minutes because of his age. He takes his medication, then he goes and lie down. So after 30 minutes, you stop. So I said, all right, 30 minutes is good enough for me. I had my notes. I started reading. I read hadith for 30 minutes. I stopped. The Shaykh was sitting under a tree outside because it's a bit warmer. And he looked at me. He says, who asked you to stop? Carry on reading. I said, all right, fine. I'm not going to complain. I read another 10 minutes. I looked at him again. He says, carry on. All right, fine, carry on. So this grandson is looking at me. I said, I didn't do anything. You told me 30 minutes. Your grandfather is telling me read. I ain't listening to him. So I read for an hour. And then he told me, right now you stop. Now I need to take my medication and go. So like I said, sometimes you just, this purely the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I planned for half an hour. So I had said I'll read the Awail of Kutub al-Tis'a, the 9 books of Hadith, the first Hadith in those books, and I can read that in maybe less than half an hour. But eventually, you end up reading more because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed, and the Shaykh was quite easy that day, and he said, okay, go ahead and read. So that trip, so I read to him, the Shaykh from the Ahl al-Hadith. I then drove down to Saharanpur and I went to go and read to Maulana Yunus Jaunpuri, the student of Maulana Zakaria, who narrates obviously via Maulana Zakaria, via Maulana Khalil Ahmed Saharanpuri, and that's the sanad goes that way. That's the Saharanpur. And there too, there was quite an interesting incident there, because people from South Africa had warned me beforehand that Maulana Yunus Jaunpuri has got a very unique temperament. He's got a very unique temperament. Sometimes he may say certain things that may come across as being, insulting or hurting your feelings, and people were getting offended. They said, don't approach him if you don't have anything. So I went, it was between Asr and Maghrib, and he has these majlis, maybe 300 students or so sitting around him. And I just walked in upstairs and I saw him sitting right in the crowd. I said, now I have to get past these 300 students. And it's a bit, and what if he tells me something? Because I know when he did come to South Africa, someone said they offered him water, and he just looked at the person and said, who asked you to bring me water? I don't want water from your hands. So I was thinking about all of that. That's in my head now. I said, I'm standing here now, I'm late. The majlis started. What if he tells me something? So I nonetheless, I said, I'm here. I only got tonight. Tomorrow I'm leaving. I'm going to Deoband tomorrow. So I might as well try. Most worst he can do is tell me no. So I walked across and I greeted him. He was sitting and he looked up at me and he said something in Urdu. And I said to him, Shaykh, I don't speak Urdu, I speak Arabic. I responded in Arabic. So he said, oh, okay, fine. He started speaking in Arabic. So he told me, what you want? I said, I need him to speak to you about hadith and narration of isnad. He said, sit down. So he narrated one hadith. He signed something like a ijaza. So I said to him, okay, I don't want to disturb you, your majlis. I'm going to leave. He says, who asked you to leave? Sit. Fine. So he told his khadim, bring tea. They brought the tea, gives me a cup of tea. He says, bring biscuits. So they took out one packet of biscuits, was nearby. And he scolded me. He said, I didn't ask you to bring these cheap biscuits, bring the expensive biscuits. So I said, all right. So he's telling me, that's for you, I'll have the cheap biscuits. I said, no, that can't work. He says, no, you the guest. And now he's like a bit forceful, so you can't be rude to him. So I ate one. He says, who's traveling with you? I said, my wife. He said, where is she? I said, downstairs in the car. Give me a whole packet of cashew nuts. He says, go give her. So I took, with my hand, I took out some and I put in my pocket. I said, I'll go give her. He says, you're a fool. Take the whole thing and go give her. All right, I take the whole thing. He says, go and give the whole thing to her. I didn't ask you to take with your hand. That's meant to be given to your wife, and don't eat it, you. All right, fine, okay. No. But anyway, it turned up being a very nice experience. I mean, different from what I had expected from the people. He was actually very welcoming, very, obliging. He didn't have any issues. And he told me, where are you going to now? I said, no, I'll sleep the night in Saharanpur. I went to see Maulana Zakaria's grandson, who's writing a Sharh on Sunan Nasai, Muhammad Aqil. And I went to read some hadith to him down the road. and then slept the night. And the next day I was in Deoband to meet Maulana Ni'matullah A'zami, who's a student of Maulana Hussain Ahmed Madani. Maulana Hussain Ahmed Madani's isnad is quite high in Bukhari and various other works. And he's got a few students still left along the world. There were a few in Bangladesh, there were a few in India, there were two in South Africa, but one has passed away. One was Maulana Yusuf Pandor, passed away a few years ago. The other one is Maulana Abdul Khaliq Mullah, he's still alive. He attended Sahih al-Bukhari with Maulana Hussain Ahmed Madani in 1957, the year that he passed away. So that was the last group of students who completed Sahih al-Bukhari with Maulana Hussain Ahmed Madani, and then that year he passed away, I think. So this Maulana Abdul Khaliq, he was in that class and he remembers it. I remember speaking to him about maybe 10 years ago, and he was still able to remember this particular thing. So anyway, that's isnad of those ulama in India and the silsila when it comes to Ahl al-Hadith. There's another alim from the Ahl al-Hadith, Maulana Akbar Farooqi, his son passed away from the Ahl al-Hadith. There was another one in the south of India, Maulana Zahiruddin Mubarak Puri. And Zahiruddin Mubarak Puri was known as Sahib A'la Sanad fi Sahih Muslim. He had this highest sanad in the world in Sahih Muslim. But he was also a student of the author of Tuhfatul Ahwadi, Maulana Ubaidullah Mubarak Puri was his student. Yeah, it is Ubaidullah Mubarak Puri. So he was his student, and for many years Maulana Zahiruddin was also from the Ahl al-Hadith, but he had sort of retired and he was sitting at his home and people forgot about him. Nobody paid much attention to him. Someone discovered him and said, hey, this man here is in his 60s or 70s, but he's got a high sanad in Sahih Muslim and various other works. So they took him out of that closet. He was just forgotten and left alone to sort of live his last days and pass on. And people found out and said, can't we read Sahih Muslim to you? And now in his late 60s or 70s, people started coming to him and reading, and that sort of energized him again. It brought him back to life. And he started having majalis of reading of hadith, and he got even invited to America when he was in his 70s or 80s just to read Sahih Muslim to him. People read Sahih Muslim to him in America a few years before he passed away, when he was close to 78, 80 years old. They had a reading in one of the Arab countries too. So we attended that one online, the reading of Sahih Muslim online. And the whole of Sahih Muslim was read over a few days to Maulana Zahiruddin Mubarak Puri. He's got various other isnad as well. And then obviously all of you are familiar with Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Kittani, the son of Shaykh Abdul Hayy al-Kittani, who was the musnid of his time. He passed away in 1962. So his son, Abdul Hayy, is the author of Fahras al-Faharis and various other works. And the Kittani family in general is known for its hadith, and it's known for its isnad and all round. I mean, amongst them is Muhammad ibn Ja'far al-Kittani, his father Ja'far ibn Idris al-Kittani, Muhammad Baqir al-Kittani. They are all known for their knowledge of hadith and isnad, and even the females in the Kittani family. There's Aisha al-Kittani and Kanza al-Kittani were the daughters of Muhammad al-Mahdi al-Kittani. They had very high sanad. They narrated from Abdul Hayy as well as from Muhammad Baqir. And Aisha passed away in 2016, and her sister Kanza passed away in 2018. Then there were still others who were still alive. Nuzha al-Kittani, Nur al-Huda al-Kittani, Jamila al-Kittani, Nafisa al-Kittani, they are still alive. In the 80s, 70s, they still narrate hadith with the sanad by Muhammad al-Zamzami and al-Kittani, some of them through their grandfather, etc. So that family has been quite active in preserving the narration of hadith, etc. They have majalis, and the unique thing is these ladies, they listen and they obtain a lot of ijazah when they're young, up to the age of 13, 14. Then naturally a girl is mature, then they don't go out and mix with the men. When they're young, their father takes them with, and then they go and listen to a hadith and attend. Then they stay away, and then they start narrating and giving ijazah again when they are 70 and above. Now they're old and the law of hijab is a bit more relaxed. Then they start granting ijazah. Right? And so by the age of 13, they obtain a lot of ijazah, sit in the majalis, then they sort of disappear from the public eye because now they get married and then they have children. Then when they're 60 and 70, then you start people start going to them and now narrating from them again. So a lot of these women, where were they all this time? Now they're giving ijazah. When you find out the woman's 80 years old, 70, where was she for the last 50 years or 60 years? Then you find out that's because of the, the woman, and they got family responsibilities, so they sort of disappear for a while, and then they come out again later, and then they start granting ijazah. Like that, there's quite a few in the family. Like I said, some are still alive, but they're much older now. Anyway, and then there's the isnad that everyone is familiar with is of Muhammad and Ahmad al-Hibshi. They're the sons of Muhammad Abu Bakr al-Hibshi, the author of Dalil al-Mushir, who was the great Shafi'i Mufti in Makkah. That sanad is very high, but Muhammad and Ahmad al-Hibshi narrated by virtue of them having heard Hadith al-Rahma and stuff from when they were young, 12 or 14, whatever, or their father, Abu Bakr, took them to meet Shaykh Umar Hamdan al-Mahrisi, who was Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani Shaykh. So that makes the sanad extremely high. But in 2007, I met Shaykh Abdullah al-Nakhibi. Abdullah al-Nakhibi was a great alim, great scholar from Yemen. He was living in Jeddah. When I met him, he was probably 110 years old. He had a dars, he was teaching between Maghrib and Isha. He had met Abdullah al-Nakhibi in Yemen, and he had heard hadith, a number of hadith, even parts of Bukhari probably from Umar Hamdan al-Mahrisi. So he granted ijazah, he gave his tabat, he's published, his asanid, he narrates from some ḥulamāʻ of Yemen as well. So I narrate that, the hadith from Abdullah al-Nakhibi from Umar Hamdan. So that's very high, because it's on the level of, in terms of ulu, it's like what Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani's Shaykh. And Muhammad Abu Bakr and Abu Bakr, the sons of Hibshi, I visited them in their homes and read hadith with them. They both, the one brother has since passed away. They probably in his 80s now, etc. So that sanad is very high in terms of internationally, worldwide. It's not, that one is very high. But remember, Muhammad and Ahmad only heard one or two hadith, or few hadith, basically, musalsalat. Whereas Abdullah al-Nakhibi may have heard portions of Sahih al-Bukhari and others. Abdul Rahman al-Kittani, on the other hand, the Moroccans, what was special about them, the sama' of a lot of books. Abdul Rahman heard Sahih al-Bukhari a number of times from his father, Abdul Hayy, and from others. So there's a lot of sama' in the Moroccan tradition as well. Then you come to another area where is known for isnad is Sham, naturally. And the Musnid of Sham is Shaykh Muhammad Muti' al-Hafid, who's alive in his 80s. He's living in the Emirates. We invited him to South Africa some years ago, and we read a whole lot of books to him in about 7 days. Shaykh Muti' narrates from many people. And he's got a tahqiq of Awail al-Ajluniya, wherein he's documented a lot of his isnad. So Shaykh Muti is probably his main shuyukh in terms of his narration is his uncle, Abdul Wahab Dibs Huzayt, who was the mufti of the Hanafis in Damascus. Abu al-Khair al-Maydani, who was a great Naqshbandi Hanafi, was one of the leaders of the Rabitat ḥulamāʻ al-Sham, great alim as well, a student of Badruddin al-Hasani. And one unique isnad of Shaykh Muti' is he was young. He probably was 10 years old when he met Abdul Muhsin al-Istuwani. Abdul Muhsin al-Istuwani was on the level of Badruddin. He was as great an alim as Badruddin al-Hasani, and he was old. He was probably in his 90s when Shaykh Muti' met him and took hadith from him and ijazah from him. At the moment in the world, there's probably only two people alive who narrate from Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Istuwani. One is Shaykh Muti', and one, some say, could be Shaykh Abdul Majid al-Hinnawi or someone else. Abdul Majid doesn't confirm it. He's alive but very old and sickly, living in Medina, is Syrian. So what we are certain about is Shaykh Muti' is definitely one to have narrated from Abdul Muhsin al-Istuwani. So like I said earlier, if he passes away, then that sanad is also one. In that way, via Shaykh Muti', narrated by his students, is hundreds of them. So that's the Sham, and there's a lot of other isnad in Sham if you're looking for Quran. There was the isnad of Bakri al-Tarabishi and all of the famous Qurra of Sham, Abdul Razak al-Halabi, Shukri al-Lahbi, all of them, but we're not going to discuss that one now. And then there was also the sanad of the Abidin family. We all hear about Ibn Abidin and Sahib al-Hashia and Radd al-Mukhtar and whatever, these were Hanafi works. Shaykh Abu Yusr al-Abidin was the Mufti of Damascus, the Mufti of Sham. He was an amazing scholar. He passed away in 1981, I think. He had studied under the Shuyukh, the Masajid. He had excelled in Hanafi fiqh and usul, and he'd mastered all of that. And he was a real authority in fiqh. But then he was doing something one day and teaching and reading fiqh book, and he realized, hey, I need to understand medicine in order to explain these masail properly. He enrolled at the Faculty of Medicine as the Mufti, and he studied, he qualified as a doctor. Right? And then he mastered the medicine. He was the only person in this contemporary time. He used to go with his jubba and imama, and big white beard. He used to go to the University of Damascus. He used to teach in Kulliyat al-Sharia, to teach in Kulliyat al-Hukuk, in law, Kulliyat al-Adab, medicine. He would teach in 4 faculties or 5 faculties at the same time. He teach medicine, teach law, teach Sharia, teach adab, and come out. And they'd see this man come out, jubba and turban, teaching medicine. Then he's teaching law. Then he was teaching fiqh and usul. And then he's teaching lugha. And he was Naqshbandi. And where's this man coming from? And then when he became the Mufti of Syria, his responsibility was too much. So he then started going maybe twice a week to his surgery and cutting down because he had a lot of things to do. Now his brother was Sheikh Muhammad Murshid Abidin, was the Qadi. At one stage he was Qadi in Damascus. So I met him when he was about 96 years old, 95 years old. And again, because he was old, his practice was between Maghrib and Isha, he doesn't allow visitors. Maghrib and Isha, he just reads Quran. At home, he doesn't entertain anyone. So once young Syrian alim took me to see him after Maghrib. But that Syrian used to frequent him a lot and visit him a lot and make his khidmah, because he and his wife was probably like 95 and he was 96, and they were living alone. And he used to do his khidmah, buy the milk and bread and bring it to their house. They were both sickly and old, couldn't walk. So he used to come in the morning. So he knocked again after Maghrib, and the Sheikh opened the door and said to him, very jolly, he said to him, but you had your turn, you were here this morning, why are you coming again? You know you don't come after Maghrib, nobody comes. So that Syrian said, but I brought a guest. I told you on the phone, I'm bringing a guest from South Africa. So he said, you're lucky, you're using the guest as a wasila to get in the second time today. So come inside. Otherwise, but the young Syrian used to visit him every day. So they were like, he's very close. So I went in and I said, the Shaykh narrated Hadith al-Rahmah, and he had his Quran on his lap. He says, my time is for Quran between Maghrib and Isha. So I said, no, I don't want to interfere, but okay, at least Hadith al-Rahmah. But what was amazing, his wife stood up and went to my wife and said, stay here and we'll teach you. Never met before. She said to her, stay here and you live with us and we will teach you. And that was something that stuck in my head. I actually considered it. I said, hey, 96-year-old Sheikh, I may only get, I don't know how much time with him. But okay, obviously, I didn't make arrangements from South Africa. My visa was only limited and they didn't want to extend it. But nonetheless, Sheikh Murshid narrates from Abu Yusr Abidin, and they are the grand nephews of Ibn Abidin. And once he passed away, there's nobody else who really narrates from Ibn Abidin directly. So that's from the Ibn Abidin family. That's the same family. Abu al-Khair Abidin was also Mufti, their father, their uncle, and then Ibn Abidin himself. Right? So that sanad is going right to Ibn Abidin, and it's in the Thabat of Ibn Abidin is published, and you'll find those asanid of Ibn Abidin there as well. So Shaykh Murshid passed away, I think, a year later. Or his wife passed away first, and then him. I could be wrong. So they passed away in short succession. And what was amazing about them, Shaykh Murshid married his cousin. How he married his cousin, his father or someone had passed away, was an alim, passed away when he was young. So the uncle looked after him. But then his wife is his cousin, her father also passed away. And the uncle looked after her. So he had the 2 cousins in the house growing up. But now when they were 12, 13 years old, the uncle was an alim, the Abidin, a lot of them were ḥulamāʼ. He said, I can't be raising a boy and girl cousin in my same house, it's small. Once they grow up, then there's the laws of hijab and separating between the sleeping arrangements and bed. So how am I going to solve this? Both are orphans. How am I going to raise children like this? So he got them married. He married them off when they were still very young. The only way he could solve the problem. And they grew up like this. after that, and they never had children, and I met them at that age when they were like 96 years old, etc. Then I understood why his wife said to my wife, "Stay here, and you'll be my daughter." I understood after that anyway. But Shaykh Murshid, so he narrated by his brother Abu Yusr Abidin, it was that Mufti of Damascus, and Abu Yusr has authored 1 or 2 books and stuff like that as well. But yeah, so that's the Sham. And then when we come to Turkey, everyone knows about Sheikh Muhammad Amin Siraj, right? And he's sanad by Muhammad Zaid al-Kawthari, Mustafa Sabri, and various others. And there's a lot of stories. I spent 10 days with Sheikh Amin Siraj, going to him every day, and Sunan Abi Dawud, Tafsir al-Nasafi, and various other books, etc. And then he would tell you a lot about what was happening in the Ottoman days, the early days when the Khilafah just fell, how they were banned from Quran and banned from doing certain things, etc. And how he studied underground in tunnels and how, etc. And he mentions all of this. And he was a very jolly kind of person, Sheikh Amin Siraj. You would let me speak in the masjid, and one day someone gets married, he says to you, "Don't go, you be the shahid, you must sign the certificate." I said, "How can I sign?" Turkish people, no, you sign the nikah certificate, otherwise this man can't get married. What must I sign the certificate? He puts his name down, if tells me put your name as witness. Anyway, so it's generally Turkey, and then Mahmoud Effendi, rahimahullah, also a very good isnad, but mainly amongst the ḥulamāʿ of Turkey, going Ottoman, going back to the various books as well. Then I spoke about Sheikh Ismail al-Imrani, and then there's also in the south of Yemen, Tarim, we all know about Habib Umar, and that area, there's Sheikh Salim al-Shatri, Habib Salim al-Shatri, whose tabat is published. He's got had very high isnad as well. There was one person in Makkah who's got a very high isnad also when it comes to the Indian isnad, over and above Sheikh Yasin al-Fadani, over and above Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki later on. There's Abdul Wakil al-Hashimi. Abdul Wakil al-Hashimi is still alive. He's probably in his 80s. He narrates from his father, Abdul Haq al-Hashimi, and Abdul Haq narrates from Abu Sa'id Abdul Rahim, and he narrates from Nadir Hussain. But his father narrates from another person, Abdul Wahab Sulaiman, I think, no. Abdul Rahman Sulaiman al-Ahdal, and from him, from Nadir Hussain. So there's the Ahdal family in Yemen, who is known to have very high isnad. Sort of the Umda, like Shah Waliullah was in India. The Ahdal family, Wajih al-Ahdal. The book is An-Nafas al-Yamani, which it's the main work on all the asanid of Yemen. That particular work is the Ahdal family is responsible for all the asanid. Basically have to go through Al-Wajih al-Ahdal, and you'll find it in the book called An-Nafas al-Yamani, the asanid of Yemen. So Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ahdal, we invited him to South Africa in around 2008 because he had a sanad where he heard from his father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, all in the family, going right to Al-Wajih al-Ahdal, going right to Sahih al-Bukhari. So the Ahdal family, like the Kitanis, had preserved this tradition for generations. And when he came to South Africa, he was in his 70s. And we read Bukhari to him in 9 days, the whole Sahih al-Bukhari, every day for about 8-9 hours a day, from 8 in the morning till 9-10 at night. We brought him and Sheikh Ali Tawfiq al-Nahas. Sheikh Ali Tawfiq al-Nahas, the famous Muqri as well from Egypt, passed away recently, not too long ago, a year or 2 years ago. Sheikh Ali Tawfiq al-Nahas narrated from his father, Tawfiq al-Nahas, who narrated from Sheikh Muhammad Bakhit al-Muti'i, who was the Mufti of Egypt, the Hanafi Mufti, who wrote the Sharh and Usul al-Fiqh and various other works as well, on Bid'ah and other things as well. So the two of them arrived. They both heard of one another. But the one being in Zabid in Yemen, Ahdal, and the other one in Egypt never met one another. They met at the airport in Joburg, first time in their life. When I picked them up, their flights had landed 1 hour apart. So I told the one, just wait, someone else is coming now. And the other one introduced to one another. They met one another for the first time here in South Africa. And then we read to them Bukhari over the next 8 or 9 days. And then they returned. And Sheikh Sulaiman, when he returned, the war started in Yemen, and he was quite outspoken politically, so he was forced to flee Yemen, eventually leaving Yemen to stay in Makkah, and he left his wife and children all behind in Yemen because there was threats on his life. So I met him a few years ago in Makkah by chance, because I heard he's in Makkah in sort of exile, but there was no number, nothing. He was now old, and so I said, I hope I can meet him. And one day, as the adhan was going off, just before Maghrib, the adhan was about to go off, people are rushing into the haram in Makkah, and I saw someone walking. I said, that looks like Sulaiman al-Ahdal. So I went. This is 14, 15 years after his visit to South Africa, and I tapped him on his back. And he turned around. He said, Shoayb, mashallah. So I told him, Sheikh, how are you doing in Makkah? I know you're away from your wife and children. He says, I'm happy and I'm sad. He said, I'm happy because every day I get to see the Haram, the Kaaba. I'm here every day. But I'm sad because I have 2 wives. They both are in Yemen. My children are in Yemen. So I'm alone, basically, this side. I eventually passed away in Makkah, I think a year ago, 2 years ago. He had a very high sanad. He said to me that Maulana Abu al-Hasan Ali Nadwi came to see him to take ijazah from him. Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda came to take ijazah from him as well, because of that prestigious sanad, the one going by the Ahdal family and going right back, all along. So like that, there are isnads that have certain specialities to it. There's a person called Ibrahim ibn Salih, who was regarded as a mufti of Nigeria. He narrates from not directly from Abdul Hayy, some say directly or via someone else, via Abdul Hayy al-Kittani, and Hafidh al-Tijani, Hafidh al-Tijani, I think he narrates directly, and he narrates from Ibrahim Nias from Senegal, who was known as Shaykh al-Islam of Africa, was central figure in the Tijani tariqa, so which is a very high sanad as well. Shaykh Ibrahim Salih at the moment is old and sickly, he's probably in 80s as well. So like that, you'll find people across interesting enough, in Indonesia, there were a number of ዑለማء who were the students of Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani, who spent many years with Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani. Some of them were the scribes, the katibs, who used to write for Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani. Some of them are in Indonesia. One of them passed away 2 or 3 years ago, Shaykh Maimun Zubair. He spent years with Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani, narrated from him and read a lot to him, etc. And there were others. Some are old now, they don't want to really talk too much. And I found 1 or 2, they said, no, we're too old for all of that now, and this kind of thing. But there were many. Even some Fatan, which normally Patan, which not the Patan of Pakistan or Afghanistan, is the Patan, which they call it Patani because of the Thailandi pronunciation, south of Thailand. There were ulama from there who spent years with Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani as well, and they would stay there and just sit and read with him, and sometimes ended up doing a lot of khidmah for Shaykh Yasin. So that sanad went that way as well to Indonesia, naturally, because that's where he's from, but it even went to part of Thailand, but it seemed to have sort of died out a bit now. It doesn't seem to be, didn't continue it too much. So like that, there's some interesting isnads, the way these isnads, Sheikh Musa'id Bashir from Sudan, who narrated from, they say he was 6 or 7 years old when he went and he heard hadith with his teacher from Shaykh Abdul Hayy al-Kittani. He's still alive, but he's a very temperamental person. He sits in a majlis. If someone says something or just irritates him, he gets up and walks out. Stop the reading, I'm not coming back. They invited him to read in Bahrain or something, to read Bukhari over 10 days. First day, someone said something, irritated him, he got up, he said, I'm going home. Put the airport, I'm going back home. And you can't convince him anyhow. I phoned him once and I said, Shaykh, I want to invite you to South Africa. He said, yes, okay, make arrangements. I phoned him 3 days later I need a copy of your passport. He says, South Africa, can I get an invitation from Wizarat al-Shu'un al-Islamiyya, Ministry of Islamic Affairs? I said, we don't have any Ministry of Islamic Affairs in South Africa. He said, I'm not coming. I said, but we're a minority, we don't have a ministry. He said, I don't care. If you don't give me a letter, I don't come. Fine. He didn't come. He just changed his mind. One day he said, I'm coming. Next 3 days later, I'm not coming. I refused to come. I found again, his son says, listen, didn't my father say his father doesn't want to come to your country? Fine. So there's nothing we could do. Right? So, but he got very high isnad. But I know this much, that he is, from people who sat in the Najah, he's very temperamental. If he decides something or he says something and you disagree with him, finish. It's over. Some days you have to deal with it. I told you Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ahdal, we invited him to South Africa, the one from Zabid. After the first 2 days reading Bukhari, he called me one day. He said to me, we need to carry on with this book. Huh? I said, yeah, but I want qat. you know, the thing that they chew in Yemen, which is a bit like almost like a drug sometimes. He said, now the people of Zabid and Sana'a, this is ada. They have it all day. They chew on it like 20 hours a day. Only probably when they're not when they're asleep, they don't need. He said, I want cut, otherwise I can't carry on. I said, Shaykh, where am I going to get cut for you now? We are in Pretoria. He said, we cannot carry on reading Bukhari unless I don't get cut. He said to me, in Yemen, the Mufti of Zabid and the Mufti of Sana'a, we sat together and read books like Qurtubi and Fath al-Bari, you know, and we have cut in the middle and we keep on, because it stimulates, it keeps you awake. And we read for like 6-7 hours. So I want cut. I told him, someone told me, but the Somalians have cut in Johannesburg. I said, don't give him that idea. He'll make me drive to Joburg to fetch it. I told him, no, I can't get cut. It's banned in South Africa. He said, I can't read. I said, what do you mean you can't read? I got a doctor. I told him, get me some vitamins from the pharmacy. I gave him, we pumped him a whole lot of vitamins just to keep him awake and keep his energy going. I told him, Sheikh, this is similar to cut. He says, this is not cut. Cut is a plant. I said, but just try it. So I kept him going for a few days, and alhamdulillah, we finished the Bukhari that way. But he insisted on having cut. He says, no way we carry on if I don't have cut. So, you know, you have to deal with situations like this at certain times, but Allah Alam. Anyway, Bismillah, otherwise we'll go on hours. Read. Yeah, I narrated the hadith, so you can just read.
Our link, Sheikh's link for the Hadith and Musalsal.
Hadith Musalsal al-Awwaliya is multiple. There's over 100, over 150. Right? So, but the most prominent amongst it would probably be Abdurrahman al-Kittani in terms of ulu. There's someone, Muhammad Sa'id al-Bukhari from Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani. There's, I've written some of it down, but perhaps Shaykh Murshid Abidin. So if you just want a variation, that one is Morocco, that one is Fadani in Makkah, Murshid Abidin is Sham, Muti al-Hafiz in Sham, in Yemen, there was Shaykh Sulaiman al-Ahdal, and there's a few others. Hopefully we'll try and write them down. Sorry?
The Hibshi brothers, both of them.
Yeah, the Hibshi brothers, both of them. Abdullah Nakhibi as well, if you want to add. Interestingly enough, Sheikh Abdullah Nakhibi, I said, who was 110 and narrated from Umar Hamdan. When I met him in 2007, and at half an hour between Maghrib and Isha, when he had that dars, not long thereafter, maybe a month or two thereafter, he received a letter from Muhammad Sheikh Mufti Taqi Uthmani and his brother Mufti Rafi Uthmani. They sent a letter to Abdullah Nakhibi asking for ijazah. And he responded to that letter. That was perhaps the last letter he responded to before passing away. He didn't reply to any other letter. So he granted ijazah to Mufti Taqi Uthmani and his brother Mufti Rafi Uthmani mukatabatan. And then he, I think a few months or weeks later, he passed away. So that was like the last probably letter he responded to. That's Abdullah Nakhibi. And Mufti Taqi mentions this when he has some majalis. He mentions his narration from Shaykh Abdullah Nakhibi. I know with one majlis, the person was reading the hadith on behalf of Mufti Taqi, made the mistake and he said Ahmad Nakhibi. Right? But it's Abdullah Nakhibi. And because I was there in that majlis and one of the students told me, I think they received the letter, but he then not yet responded. And then a few weeks later, he replied to the letter and then he passed away thereafter. Because he may have been about 110 or somewhat when he passed away, around there, but he was quite old, Abdullah Nakhibi. Anyway, yeah.
المسلسل بقراءة سورة الصف في أسانيد شيخنا إلى عبد الله بن سلام رضي الله عنه قال: قعدنا نفرا من أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فتذاكرنا فقلنا لو نعلم أي الأعمال أقرب إلى الله عز وجل لعملناه، فأنزل الله عز وجل سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم.
واصل اقرأ. نعم.
سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. وإذ قال عيسى بن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد. فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين. ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله الكذب وهو يدعى إلى الإسلام والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ومساكن طيبة في جنات عدن ذلك الفوز العظيم. وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى بن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله. فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة فأيدنا الذين آمنوا على عدوهم فأصبحوا ظاهرين. قال عبد الله بن سلام قرأها علينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى ختمها. قال أبو سلمة فقرأها علينا ابن سلام حتى ختمها. وهكذا قال كل واحد من الرواة حتى وصل إلينا فقرأها علينا أشياخنا المذكورون حتى ختموها. So this particular narration.
Read all of it first,
Okay.
and then I'll come to it.
قال ابن الطيب هذا حديث صحيح متصل الإسناد والتسلسل ورجال إسناده ثقات بل قال بعض الحفاظ وأصح حديث وقع لنا مسلسلا وأصح مسلسل يروى في الدنيا. رواه الترمذي في جامعه والحاكم في مستدركه مسلسلا وصححه على شرط الشيخين ورواه الإمام أحمد وأبو يعلى في مسنديهما والطبراني في المعجم الكبير وغيرهم من عدة طرق كما نبه على ذلك كله الحافظ جار الله بن فهد وأشار السخاوي إلى جميع طرقه والله أعلم. المسلسل
الفاتحة.
المسلسل بقراءة سورة الفاتحة بسند شيخنا read the whole from the beginning?
No, اقرأ الحديث.
بسند شيخنا إلى عبد المؤمن الجني البدري الصحابي من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقراءة ورش مكسورة ملك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قال ابن الطيب وأرويها عن شيخنا أحمد بن نصر المذكور في عموم إجازته. المسلسل بقول إني أحبك بسند شيخنا إلى معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه قال قال لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إني أحبك فقل اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. وفي رواية أبي داود يا معاذ والله إني أحبك وأوصيك ألا تدع في دبر كل صلاة أن تقول اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. وقال معاذ للسنابح إني أحبك. وقال السنابح للحبل إني أحبك. وكذا قال كل راو لمن روى عنه ولمن روي عنه. وقال لنا ذلك شيخنا وشيوخنا ولله الحمد. قال ابن الطيب الحديث صحيح الإسناد والتسلسل أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك وصححه كما قال ابن الجزري في العقود وأخرجه البيهقي أيضا في الشعب مسلسلا كما في الجياد ووافقهما السخاوي في الجواهر على صحة متنه وإسناده. وقال أخرجه أحمد وإسحاق وعبد بن حميد في مسانيدهم وأخرجه أبو داود والنسائي وابن حبان وغيرهم. المسلسل بالمحمدية بسند شيخنا إلى محمد بن عبد الله بن جحش حدثنا أبي عن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه مر في السوق برجل مكشوف فخذه فقال له رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم غض فخذك فإنها عورة. قال ابن الطيب هذا حديث عجيب التسلسل بالمحمدي وليس في إسناده من ينظر في حاله سوى محمد بن عمرو واسم جده سهل ضعفه يحيى القطان ووثقه ابن حبان وله متابع رواه أحمد وابن خزيمة وعلقه البخاري في الصحيح ووصله في التاريخ وأخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك. والرجل الممرور به هو معمر بن عبد الله بن نضلة القرشي العدوي كما صرح به في طرق أخرى في المسند وغيره. وقد ذكره الحافظ ابن حجر في أماله وفي الأربعين المتباينة وغيرها وقصره السخاوي على درجة حسن. المسلسل بالفقهاء الحنفية بسند شيخنا إلى عبد الله بن أبي حبيبة قال سمعت أبا الدرداء يقول كنت رديف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا أبا الدرداء من شهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأني رسول الله وجبت له الجنة. فقلت وإن زنى وإن سرق قال فسار ساعة فعاد لكلامه فقلت وإن زنى وإن سرق قال صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن زنى وإن سرق وإن رغم أنف أبي الدرداء. فكان أبو الدرداء يحدث بهذا الحديث كل جمعة عند منبر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ويضع أصبعه على أنفه ويقول وإن رغم أنف أبي الدرداء. المسلسل بالفقهاء الشافعية بسند شيخنا إلى ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال المتبايعان كل واحد منهما بالخيار على صاحبه ما لم يتفرقا إلا بيع الخيار. قال ابن الطيب الحديث صحيح أخرجه الشيخان وأبو داود والنسائي عن مالك به كما في الجهاد وغيره. المسلسل بالقبض على اللحية بسند شيخنا إلى أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يجد العبد حلاوة الإيمان حتى يؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره حلوه ومره. قال قبض رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على لحيته وقال آمنت بالقدر خيره وشره حلوه ومره.
Interesting, when the Shaykh Yasin al-Fadani from Indonesia, he didn't have much of a beard. So when he came to Qabd al-Lihi, he just grabbed onto his chin basically. He didn't have anything. That's what some of his students say. And then when some of the females narrate this hadith, then they're also in a bit of a problem. Qabd al-Lihi. So you can't, that tasalsul haqiqi and doesn't take place. But anyway.
قال الفاداني وهكذا قال كل راو من الرواة وأقول أنا قابض على لحيتي النية صادقة على نية صادقة وعقيدة صحيحة آمنت بالقدر خيره وشره علوه ومره. قال ابن الطيب هكذا أخرجه الحاكم في نوع المسلسل من علومه ورواه أبو نعيم في المعرفة مسلسلا أيضا وأخرجه الديباجي وعنه ابن المفضل في مسلسلاتهما والغزنوي والخلعي في التاسع من فوائده وعبد الغفار السعدي في مسلسلاته وغيرهم ولا يخلو عن ضعف. المسلسل بيوم عيد بسند شيخنا إلى ابن جريج عن عطاء رضي الله عنهما قال صلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بالناس العيد ثم قال ومن شاء أن يذهب فليذهب ومن شاء أن فليقعد. وللحديث طريق أخرى مسلسلة من حديث سعد بن أبي وقاص أغفلوها لشدة ضعفها والله أعلم. Sorry, I missed one here. Before this, إلى ابن جريج أيضا يوم المسلسل بيوم عاشوراء بسند شيخنا إلى أبي يوسف القاضي عن عبد الربيع عن حماد بن زيد عن غيلان بن جرير عن عبد الله بن معبد الزماني عن أبي قتادة أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في صيام يوم عاشوراء إني أحتسب على الله أن يكفر السنة التي قبلها. قلت هكذا روي مسلسلا إلى أبي الفرج بن شحنة كما في مسلسلات ابن الطيب حيث لم يذكر التسلسل فيما فوقه. ورواه السيد علي بن علي الوتري أو الوتري بالتسلسل إلى أبي يوسف القاضي. قال ابن الطيب وحديث صحيح انفرد به مسلم والتسلسل فيه انقطاع ما والأكثر يقول الراوي فيه سمعته يوم عاشوراء قال وقد سمعته من شيخنا أبي عبد الله محمد بن عبد الرحمن الفاسي يوم عاشوراء عدة مرات.
Okay, just last maybe a few comments. The last one on Yawm, the one before that on Musalsal bi Yawm Eid. The hadith, you've heard it,
and there is the sanad you'll get. But there's, in order for the tasalsul to take place, the ideal thing would have been to listen to it on the day of Eid and another on the day of Ashura. I recall some years ago, the late Shaykh Taha Karan, rahimahullah, I called him and said, Mulana, we need to hear it on Ashura, not on another day. And that's when they arranged that majlis for listening to the hadith on the day of Ashura. So that would be the ideal. That's tasalsul haqiqi, and we hear the hadith on Yawm Ashura, on the day of Yawm Eid. The one on Yawm Eid, we arranged once to listen to it to a number of people. One was called Shaykh Muhammad al-Hajuji. Muhammad al-Hajuji was from Jadida in Morocco. He was the same, he was a contemporary of Abdul Rahman al-Kittani, who both had hadith from Abdul Hayy al-Kittani. So he narrated from Abdul Hayy. So that was a very, very high isnad. He was old, he was in the 80s. And he also narrated from his father, Muhammad al-Hajuji. And his father was a great muhaddith who wrote a sharh on Sunan al-Darimi. And Muhammad al-Hajuj in about 10 volumes or more. And Muhammad al-Hajuji, the son, had the handwritten copy of his father's sharh at his home. He had it. He was intending to have it published. And he was, like I said, on the level of Abdul Rahman al-Kittani. And his father was the grand sheikh of the Tijani Tariqa and the whole of Morocco. And he was a great muhaddith and stuff. And Muhammad was also a renowned, famous alim. And I invited him to South Africa. And he agreed. And he sent me his passport. He's and his son. And he said, okay, start the process. But for some reason, he was in his 80s. I may have not been clear. So, and from his side, he was used to maybe the Hijrah dates, and I was working on the English date. So when I phoned him a week or two later, I said, Sheikh, we're starting the process to, to book your ticket and stuff like that. So he said, give me the date again. So when I gave him the date, he says, hey, that coincides with the Rabi al-Awwal. I said, yes. So he says, for the last 50 years or so, Rabi al-Awwal, I read Ash-Shifa by Qadi Iyad with a group of students. I can't leave it now. We read Qadi Iyad Shifa. So can't we delay till after Rabi al-Awwal? I said, that's fine. We'll delay till after Rabi al-Awwal. It's not a problem. So during that particular time, his son and daughter both met up in an accident. One of them passed away. And that really affected him badly. Then he got very ill and he passed away. And I still have his passport on my computer, copy of his passport. And he had agreed to visit South Africa in his 80s. He had agreed to come, and that would have been very good for us as well. But like the qadr of Allah subhanahu, that's why I told you in the beginning, when you get the opportunity, go out and meet the ulama, because you don't know what happens. He agreed, everything was fine, he had no issues, but this happened. So that was Muhammad al-Hajuji. I know Musalsal bi Yawm Eid. One day I think we heard it from him, Ashura, as well as we arranged to listen to Yawm Ashura and Yawm Eid from Nuzha al-Kittani, who's the mother of Shaykh Hamza al-Kittani. Hamza is still alive. He's quite an authority in terms of anything about the Kittani family and Isnad as well. So his mother is Nuzha al-Kittani. So we heard that on the day of Eid, and once we heard it on Yawm Ashura from her and someone else, I think was Nur al-Huda al-Kittani, as well as Jamila al-Kittani and a few others besides them. But I just, and a number of other shuyukh as well. 2 or 3 things and I'll end. Some asanid which are quite special. There's a sanad of someone called Shaykh Muhammad Nimar al-Khatib. Shaykh Muhammad Nimar al-Khatib was one of the most amazing ulama you'll find. He was Palestinian, and I'm mentioning it because of Palestine and the situation at the moment. He was from Haifa. He grew up in the city. He went to study in Al-Azhar in the early time, 1930s or 40s. He studied under Habibullah Shanqiti, the author of, what was it? Al-Jam Bayna Sahih Bukhari wa Muslim aḥādīth. What's the name of the book? فيما اتفق عليه البخاري ومسلم or something like that, or Al-Jam Habibullah Shanqiti and his brother Muhammad Khidr al-Mayaba Shanqiti. They two renowned ulama, great ulama. They had very high isnad as well. So Shaykh Nimar, while studying in Al-Azhar in Egypt, met up with Muhammad Habibullah and took ijazah from him. He also attended some of the durus according to his ijazah of Shaykh Ibrahim al-Simaluti, as well as was it Shaykh Yusuf al-Dijwi, I think? No, Salam al-Azami. Salam al-Azami. Salam al-Azami is the one who wrote this famous work called Furqan al-Quran on Mutashabihat al-Quran, Ayat al-Sifat, etc. So Shaykh Nimar attended some of their durus, but he specifically speaks about his narration from Habibullah, Muhammad Habibullah Shanqiti, which is a very high sanad as well. Shaykh Nimar who lived then, when he returned from Al-Azhar to Palestine, he stayed there. He got involved in the jihad in 1948, that period, with Izzuddin al-Qassam. He was in Izzuddin al-Qassam's army fighting against the Israelis, the Jews. Some reports say he got shot in his stomach, and there was some karamat about him where they fired a few bullets and he simply shook his jubba and the bullet just fell without harming. And one bullet eventually lodged into his stomach, and he said he's not going to remove it. They told him how. He said, this is my hujjah in front of Allah on the day of Qiyamah for Masjid al-Aqsa. And he then moved for a while, Syria. He lived in Iraq. He taught and he was khatib in Jami' Abi Hanifa, the mosque of Imām Abu Hanifa in Baghdad. And then eventually he settled in Medina Munawwara, and he lived for like 30 or 40 years till he passed away in Medina. 2012 or something, he passed away. So Sheikh Nimar, when I met him the first time, now he was known as very powerful speaker, very full of courageous person. He was already in his 90s, 100. He used to have a dars after Isha, like an hour after Isha. He makes Isha, Nafil Salah, Witr and all of that. Then he has a dars that starts 10 o'clock at night and goes on in his 90s, and he has a lesson. He was teaching Seerah, and I'm sitting in the dars. Then he looked at me first time, he says, you from South Africa, tell me about your country. What's the Muslims like? And I told him, no, Muslim is 2% or 3% maximum. He said, how long are you in South Africa? I said, with 300 years. He says, do you want an old man like me to come help you make da'wah? Can't you guys do anything better than that after all these years? I felt bad, because now he's in his 90s, and he says, do you want someone like me to help you to do da'wah? Do you need help? I said, Sheikh, we'll try, inshallah. He said, no, try. You need to take the seerah and implement the seerah. And that is your solution. Because he was having a dars on seerah. He said, the seerah is your solution. And but Sheikh Nimar was an amazing alim. He would sign his name, Muhammad Nimar al-Khatib, hoping that Allah grants him death next to his beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he passed away in Medina on the day of Eid al-Adha, a few years ago. So I mentioned him because of the Palestinian connection also, and his connection in terms of his riwayah. And there's some story about his taking the tariqah from Sheikh Mahmoud Effendi later in his life. Sheikh Mahmoud Effendi, some people say that they say he insists you make istikhara before you take the tariqah from him. And he used to visit Sheikh Mahmoud Effendi, and he would visit Medina, and Sheikh Nimar met him, and he said, I want to take bay'ah with you. Sheikh Mahmoud said, I know you're a sheikh and you're a big alim, etc., graduated from Azhar 10, 12 years, but you must also make istikhara. So Sheikh Nimar said, why must I make istikhara when I saw Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam telling me to come to you? So then Sheikh Mahmoud said, all right, fine, then there's nothing I can do about that. And so that Sheikh Nimar, Muhammad Nimar al-Khatib, his son is an alim, he's still alive though, but not too much into riwayah and stuff, but Sheikh Nimar. The other person is there was someone else who's quite interesting, Sheikh Malik al-Sanusi. Malik al-Sanusi is from the famous Sanusi family in Libya, King Sanusi, who was the king, but they have very powerful riwayah. They had amazing riwayah. Isnad was very powerful in that Sanusi tribe or clan, if you want. Malik al-Sanusi was in charge of the awqaf of the Sanusi family in Medina Munawwara, but he was an alim as well. So I met with him and took ijazah and stuff from him in Medina Munawwara. He passed away after that some years ago already. Then I spoke about Badruddin al-Hasani. Badruddin al-Hasani, there were two people. One was Shaykh Ahmed al-Habbal. Ahmed al-Habbal he grew up almost in like crawling around the house of Badruddin al-Hasani. So Badruddin's either his wife or someone breastfed him, so that the laws of hijab eventually fell away. So he would be in and out of the house. So he became very close to Shaykh Badruddin, and he sat in some of the durus. But Ahmed al-Habbal later on focused more on ibadah and a lot of dhikr and a lot of salawat, and he became known. People like Shaykh al-Bhuti and others almost regarded him as amongst the Abdal of Sham. He would make like 100,000 salawat a day. And people, ḥulamāʼ who I met, had seen Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they even say, well, Shaykh Ahmed al-Habbal fasts and breaks his fast, make sure you take part there because that dua is accepted. So I met Ahmed al-Habbal, and people had told me before that he was 104, 103. He won't write. He refuses to write. He used to make one khatam of the Quran every 3 days for 80 years. That was his practice. One khatam every 3 days. So he said, he tells you time is for Allah. I got no time to talk. I got no time to do anything. So for 3 days, I watched him near the Umayyad Mosque. I just watched him. I had no guts to actually speak to him because he doesn't speak. He just reads Quran. And also you see this man's 103 and big white beard. You just, the ru'b, the haiba of the man. You just look at him and you're like freeze. What you going to say to a man like this who's 103 years old? So I just watched him one day. I sat for like 3 hours looking at him. And he just reads Quran. He doesn't. Second day I watched him. His son told me, you can't carry on like this. One of the day your time's going to run out. You're going to have to leave the country. Whatever you want to do with my father, you have to ask. So I said, but he doesn't speak. He says, no, the only time you'll speak to him is probably when he gets up to go to the masjid for Dhuhr, walk with him and maybe then speak to him. I said, fine. I walked behind him for Dhuhr. I didn't have the guts to walk in front of him or walk next to him, so I walked behind him. He led the salah for Dhuhr, a small masjid near the Umayyad Mosque. Came back, I'm walking behind him. He's sitting on the floor and the desk like this. He just opened his Quran. His son looked at me, he said, that's your last chance. Once the Quran opens, he's not going to speak. So as his hand was on the Quran, so I went to him. I said, Shaykh. And he was watching me. 2 days I've been sitting there. So I said, Shaykh, Assalamu alaikum, in this word. He says, Papa. So they told me he'd give ijazah verbally. And if people insist, he would just sign his name on a page in approval. So I had all of this at the back of my mind. So I asked him, tell me about Shaykh Badruddin al-Hasani. So he said, and these were the words he said, أوصانا شيخنا بدر الدين الحسني بكثرة الصلاة على الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم بها تفتح عليك. That was his words. And then he said, so I said, Shaykh, can we get ijazah via Shaykh Badruddin al-Hasani Sanad? He said, أجزتكم. So I said, I came from far, you need to write something. He says, أين الورق? I had the page ready, so I put it in front of him. Where's the pen? I put it in his hand. So he signed the name there and he looked at me, he smiled because now I had planned everything. I knew what was. And then his grandson or great grandson, was about 10 years old, was playing outside. So I said, who's that? He said, my grandfather. I traveled, so I was carrying South African Cadbury chocolates or something. So I took out one. I said, here's a chocolate for you, but we'll give your grandfather. Tell him the person who gives you the chocolate must make dua for him. So the boy said, can I eat it? I said, yeah, you can also eat it, but you can. So the next day I came past, I gave it to my grandfather. Don't worry, he made dua. I said, alhamdulillah. So that was Shaykh Ahmed al-Habbal. There's another person, Muhammad Fu'ad Taha. Muhammad Fu'ad Taha is still alive, but he's probably 106, 107, I don't know. I could be wrong. But until recently, until maybe 2 years ago, people were still making contact with him and reading to him. He attended some durus of Shaykh Badruddin al-Hasani as well. But in the last 2 years, it seems to be very quiet. So either he's very, very old and sickly, so nobody's getting access to him now. But I phoned him about 10 years ago or more. And I read hadith to him on the phone. And he heard, and I heard everything. And, he responded, he spoke very clearly. And he was already probably like 99. And he was still, but now, like I said, in the last 2 years, I didn't hear anything about him. So it seems like he's either very ill or very old, and they're not allowing people, in to see him. So that was the two students of Badruddin al-Hasani. And that's important because Badruddin passed away in 1935. So these are the last two people in the world to narrate from Shaykh Badruddin al-Hasani. Okay, Ahmed al-Habbal has subsequently passed away. Shaykh Muhammad Fu'ad Taha is probably the only person alive to narrate from Shaykh Badruddin. Yusuf al-Atum passed away some years ago. I don't have. No, I don't. I told you the letter story, the person, but I don't have from Yusuf al-Atum. Maybe via someone who made ijazah or sought from my view, but I didn't confirm that. But I myself, I had that letter, the person was on his way and the Sheikh passed away, so no. But from Badruddin and Ahmed al-Habbal and Fu'ad Taha, yes. And then there's some ulama from Yemen which are very famous. It's not that Shaykh Qasim al-Bahr and a few others. In Sham, there were a few other ulama that have very unique isnad. One was Shaykh Muhammad Sa'id al-Kahil. He was in the city of Homs. And he narrates from Ahmad al-Ghumari, which is a very high sanad. Ahmad al-Ghumari died in 1960. And so that's a very high sanad. There's very few who narrate directly from Ahmad al-Ghumari. And Shaykh Sa'id al-Kahil at one time was like the mufti of Homs, the city of Homs. and he was a leader, a sheikh in the Shadili Tariqa as well. He narrates from a few other people, Ibrahim al-Khutani and the father of Muhammad Alawi ibn Abbas al-Maliki, and various other ulama. Also, he used to live next to the masjid of Sayyidina Khalid ibn Walid rahimahullah radiyallahu anhu, where he's buried. So he was the official Imām of that mosque. And there was someone else, and then there was just one more person I made a note of here. There was someone. In Iraq, there's some ulama who have some good isnad as well. One of them, many have heard of him, is Muhammad Akram Abdul Wahab al-Musili. He's got his asanid published in a book called Al-Imdad. It's in a couple of volumes. And he's got some other work. And then beside him, there's Yusuf al-Marashli, who's Iraqi, but he lives I think in Jordan or Beirut or somewhere. He's also got some decent asanid. And there's one or two other ulama in Iraq, Shaykh Ahmed Hassan al-Taha. He's about 80. Somewhat he's the Mufti of Baghdad. He narrates from some of the ulama of Iraq with quite good isnad as well, specifically in fiqh, but general isnad as well. He's still alive, and he's got some good isnad. The ulama of Iraq had some very unique isnad as well. There was someone else. Anyway, Shaykh Ibrahim Khalifa al-Ahsai, renowned famous Sheikh Ibrahim Khalifa al-Ahsai, was from the city of Ahsa in Saudi. He lived the last few years of his life in Turkey, and he passed away. A lot of people know him for his tasawwuf and huge majalis of dhikr, etc. But he had numerous asanid, some very high isnad as well. And I remember him telling me one thing. He was quite very jovial, but also he intended to pass a message on. So I was sitting with him, and he says, "Yeah, you from South Africa, you guys got a lot of issues." I said, "What issues?" He says, "You guys fight with one another." And I'm going to mention it the way he said it. "You guys fight this and this tabrikhi, and this one is very..." What nonsense you guys got? So I kept quiet. I don't know what he's going to say next. He says, "I'll tell you something. I was going from Ahsa to Medina every few months to go and study under the ulama in Medina. I'd go and study with Shaykh Maulana Zakaria Khan Dahlawi. And he'd tell me, 'Where you coming from?' He'd say, I said to him, 'I'm coming from Muhammad Diyauddin Qadri.' Muhammad Diyauddin Qadri was known in our ways, a great, we'll say, Sunni or Barelwi alim, but he was a great alim. And when I tell Maulana Zakaria, 'I'm coming from Diyauddin Qadri,' he says, 'A great man, and awliya illah, give him my salams.' I go to Diyauddin Qadri a few hours later. He says, 'Where are you coming from?' I say, 'I'm coming from Maulana Zakaria.' He said, 'Great alim, great muhaddith, give him my salams.' He says, 'Those two had the greatest amount of respect for one another. You guys are not even your direct students. Why are you guys fighting? Why are you people fighting? You're not even their direct students, but you people are fighting.' They had the greatest amount of respect for one another, and they both lived in Medina. So that was very, very important, from Shaykh Ibrahim Khalifa. He narrates from Shaykh Shadili al-Naifa as well, the great Tunisian alim, and from various other ulama. His asanid are published. Shaykh Ibrahim al-Ahsai passed away a few years ago in Turkey. A few years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just before Sheikh Sabuni, I think. He passed away. But
I think Shaykh Ibrahim al-Ahsai passed away the same day like Musalsal. I think so.
Yeah, probably. It's possible. So he lived just on the outskirts of Istanbul, not right in the center of where the tourist areas are. But and he was quite close to Sheikh Mahmoud Effendi and a number of other ulama as well. And while he was sitting there, he had one alim, a Turkish alim, who had studied for many years in Deoband, I think maybe 10 years or something. So he said, "You see that man sitting here? He's sitting with my feet, but he's also a Deoband. He doesn't have issues. Why you guys are fighting in South Africa?" He'd never been to South Africa, but apparently he'd heard quite a bit about whatever happens or something like that. So yeah, he mentioned those few things, which is quite interesting. And then that Sheikh Abdul Wakil al-Hashimi I mentioned earlier in Makkah. One interesting thing he meant, his father was a great muhaddith, and the king, I think, was it King Faisal or one of the kings, had brought his father to come with the intention of teaching hadith in Makkah. So yeah, or his grandfather. And when I went to him, I went to read the hadith to him with two other ulama, Muhammad Abu Bakr Badib and Salman Abu Ghudda, Shaykh Abu Ghudda's son. And they were reading Musnad Imam Ahmed. So we read from Asr to Maghrib, and after we read, he says, I'm going to show you people something which I don't show many people. He scratched around the books, he took out a box like a safe kind of thing, he opened it, took out something made of silver, small like a sandal. So he said, you see this, look at it. He says, my father or my grandfather, father or grandfather, I could have been wrong there again. So he says, when the Ottomans were leaving, and after the Saudis had taken over and the Ottomans were now leaving and packing up and going back to Turkey and handing over to the Saudis, he said, my father, grandfather was very close friends to a professional shoemaker. But my the father had the sandal of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Ottomans or someone was going to take it away with them, and they were going to take it to the museum in Topkapi, whatever. So he said he got his friend, the shoemaker, to make him a replica of the sandal of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a real, exact, according to his size, and another one in pure silver. So he said the one that he had made eventually got worn out, and he used to wear it on special occasions to his father or whatever, that looked the exact sandal like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sandal. And the other one of silver, he says this is the one. It's made in pure silver, exactly on the sandal of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a replica of it. And he showed it to us and said that you can look at it, this is exactly how it is made. So that was something special that he had and preserved with him, and he is with him still today, in his place. So I think I'll stop at that, otherwise we won't get done. Yeah. Musalsalat ta'ala ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So just as a traditional formality, it's like أجزتكم برواية هذه الأحاديث بالأسانيد عن الشيوخ وإن كانوا عدد كبير، وإن شاء الله إذا كتب الله لنا يعني الفرصة وقدر الله لنا ندون يعني إن شاء الله. I'll try at some point to write them down, the names of the shuyukh, and I tried documenting some things here, the names of some of the shuyukh and who they narrate from. Many of these shuyukh have their own thabat, so you write the name of the sheikh and make reference to their thabat instead of documenting all their isnad. The thabat is published, it's available, some are online, some you can get it, so there's no need for me to rewrite all of that. Those who don't have athbat or mashyakha or ma'ajim, etc., like Sheikh Akram Nadwi has recently published his one in about 5 volumes of his asanid. He's got a lot of asanid as well. Sheikh Yahya al-Ghawthani, he's got a lot of asanid as well. He's got like 300 shuyukh. And Yahya al-Ghawthani was very close to Sheikh Fadani. He read Bukhari multiple times. He read the Kutub al-Sitta to Sheikh al-Fadani. He read the lot to Sheikh al-Fadani. At one stage, he was the reader in Sheikh Fadani's majalis. He would open up with the opening qiraat, he would read the hadith, etc. So he's got multiple asanid as well, and many were fortunate to read to him here when Sheikh Taha rahimahullah compiled the Arba'un al-Ghawthaniya and stuff like that, and that was read in Turkey as well, the Arba'un al-Ghawthaniya. So inshallah at some point we'll document some of these and make it available inshallah. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. إجازة عامة إن شاء الله. Although there's that isnad which many people narrated, some of the shuyukh narrate the ijazah of Ahl al-Asr and Ahl al-Yulad wa lam Yulad. I'm not too comfortable with those at the moment, but some of the shuyukh don't narrate it, and ijazah liman lam Yulad and etc. and ijazah li Ahl al-Asr etc. The minimum like what is it? Imam al-Bukhari's shurut, or تم اللقاء, or Imam Muslim تمكن اللقاء, then it's possible. لم يلتقي الشيخ, when you just say, otherwise everyone will narrate. I can also say I narrated from Shaykh al-Fadani for example.
Some of our students online.
Some online, yeah, the online students as well, alhamdulillah. I can't deny the online students. Number of shuyukh I also read to them online because they were very far and you couldn't get access to them. Anyway, نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى القبول إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيكم. شكرا. Sheikh, one of the shuyukh here make the dua. Bismillah. No. I did a lot of speaking already.
الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل عواقب أمورنا بالخير بيدك الخير والعافية إنك على كل شيء قدير. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون بفضلك دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها سلام وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله.